Welcome back. You know me as the man who rode through Monument Valley, the man who stood tall against outlaws and defended the frontier with a Winchester in my hand. But there was another frontier, one without dust or horses, but far more dangerous. It was a frontier of shadows, hidden microphones, and silent threats. They call it the Cold War. To most, it was a battle of maps and missiles. To me, it was a battle for the very soul of what it means to be free. I wasn't just an actor on a screen. I was a symbol they wanted to tear down. In Moscow, they didn't just watch my movies to be entertained. They watched them to understand the American spirit, and they feared it. They knew that as long as the image of the independent, unshakable man existed, their chains would never feel natural. This wasn't a movie set, and there was no director to yell "cut" when things got ugly. This was the real deal, a silent battle fought in the dark corners of the world, and I was right in the middle of the crosshairs. I remember the early 50s, when the air felt thick with suspicion. You couldn't trust a shadow, and sometimes you couldn't even trust a handshake. The Kremlin had a long memory and a longer reach. They saw the Duke not as a person, but as a weapon of cultural defiance. Stalin himself, a man who knew a thing or two about iron wills, reportedly saw my films as a direct threat to his ideology. He understood that a man who values his word and his freedom above his life is a man who cannot be conquered. They sent their agents, their ideologues, and their whispers to infiltrate the very heart of Hollywood. They wanted to soften us, to make us doubt our own strength. But they forgot one thing about a man raised on the values of the West. We don't back down just because the enemy is hiding in the tall grass. We wait, we watch, and we keep our powder dry. The silent battles had begun, and I wasn't about to let the flame of liberty flicker on my watch. There are stories that never made the headlines, whispered in hushed tones by men who worked in the dark. They say the orders came directly from the top, from the cold heart of the Soviet machine. They wanted me gone, not because I was a soldier, but because I represented a way of life that made their walls look weak. Think about it. A lone man, standing firm against injustice, asking for nothing but his freedom. That's a dangerous idea to a tyrant. They sent two men to Los Angeles, agents trained in the art of the permanent silence. They thought I was just a movie star who lived in a world of make-believe. They didn't realize that the man you saw on the screen wasn't a mask. I didn't need a stuntman for my convictions. My friends in the FBI, men who knew the weight of a secret, gave me the warning. They wanted to put me under protection, to hide me away in some safe house. I told them no. A man doesn't hide in his own backyard. If they were coming for me, they'd find me standing exactly where I always stood. This wasn't just about me. It was about the message they were trying to send. If they could break the Duke, they could break the American heart. They used every trick in the book. Smear campaigns, anonymous threats, even trying to turn my own industry against me. They wanted to paint me as a dinosaur, a relic of a past that didn't matter anymore. But the truth is, honor and courage don't have an expiration date. They aren't trends that go out of style with the seasons. The Cold War was a psychological chess match, and I knew that if I showed even a crack of fear, they'd pour their poison right into it. I kept my chin up and my eyes on the horizon. I continued to make the films that celebrated the rugged individual, the man who takes responsibility for his own destiny. Every time I stepped in front of the camera, it was a strike against the collective gloom they were trying to spread across the globe. My screen was my battlefield, and my character was my armor. People ask about the Moscow mission, that strange chapter that sounds like something out of a spy novel. Did I really walk into the lion's den? Let's just say that in those days, lines were blurred and motives were often hidden behind a cloud of cigar smoke. I always believed that to defeat an enemy, you have to look him in the eye. You have to understand what drives him, what he fears, and what he's willing to sacrifice. Moscow was a city of gray stone and cold stairs, a place where the sun seemed to struggle just to hit the pavement. Walking those streets, I felt the weight of a system that tried to grind the human spirit into dust. It made me realize how precious our loud, messy, and imperfect freedom really is. It wasn't about diplomacy, it was about presence. It was about showing them that the American spirit wasn't just a flickering image on a projector. It was made of flesh, blood, and a stubborn refusal to bow. I saw the fear in their eyes, the kind of fear that only comes from living under a lie. They were told that the West was collapsing, that we were weak and decadent. But then they saw a man who looked like he could move a mountain with a glare, and it confused them. It planted a seed of doubt in their propaganda. The silent battle in Moscow wasn't fought with words, but with posture. It was fought with the way I carried myself, with the refusal to be intimidated by their grand parades and their stony-faced generals. I wasn't a spy, and I wasn't a politician. I was just a man from Iowa who believed in the right to be left alone. That trip taught me that the Cold War wouldn't be won with bombs, but with the persistence of the individual soul. As long as one man stands up and says no to the collective, the dream of the tyrant is dead. I came back from that gray city with a renewed fire in my belly, ready to ride harder than ever before. While the world was looking at Berlin and Korea, the real subversion was happening right under our noses in California. They didn't need tanks to invade us. They used scripts and ideas. They wanted to change the way we saw ourselves. They started telling stories where the hero was the villain, and the villain was just a victim of society. They wanted to take the grit out of our bones and replace it with a soft, gray uncertainty. I saw it happening in the studios, in the writers' rooms, and at the dinner parties. Men who used to stand for something were suddenly bending whichever way the political wind blew. I couldn't sit back and watch it happen. I helped form the Motion Picture Alliance for the Preservation of American Ideals. It wasn't about a witch hunt. It was about standing up for the values that made our industry great in the first place. It was a lonely fight sometimes, and I made a lot of enemies who had long memories. But a man has to be able to live with himself when the lights go down. They called us blacklisters and reactionaries, but we were just men who didn't want to see our culture sold out to a foreign ideology that hated everything we stood for. The Cold War in Hollywood was a war of narratives. Would we tell stories of strength or stories of surrender? I chose strength every single time. I fought for the scripts that showed the struggle of the pioneer, the courage of the soldier, and the integrity of the lawman. I knew that the kids watching those movies needed to know that being a man meant standing your ground, even when the whole world was telling you to move. We were protecting the frontier of the mind. Every time a script tried to sneak in a little bit of that brotherhood of the state nonsense, I made sure to call it out. You can call me old-fashioned, but I've never seen a committee build a house or win a war. It's always the individual, the man with a vision and the guts to follow it through, that moves the needle of history. The Cold War eventually ended on the maps, but the battle for the spirit of man never truly stops. It just changes its face and its name. The silent battles I fought in the 50s and 60s are the same ones you're fighting today. The tactics are different. Now it's algorithms and digital noise instead of secret agents and pamphlets. But the goal is the same: to make you small, to make you afraid, and to make you part of a faceless crowd. They want you to trade your soul for a little bit of comfort and a lot of conformity. But I'm here to tell you that the Duke's shadow still looms large for a reason. Because deep down, every human being knows that they were born to be free. They know that a man's word is his bond, and that some things are worth fighting for, no matter the odds. The Cold War was just one chapter in a much longer story of human defiance. As I look back on those silent battles, I don't regret a single scar. They are the marks of a life lived with purpose. I stood my ground when it was popular, and I stood my ground when it was dangerous. That's the only way to be. You don't get to choose the times you live in, but you do get to choose how you respond to them. Whether the enemy is a dictator across the sea or a whisper in your own ear telling you to give up, the answer is the same: stand tall. Speak the truth. And never, ever apologize for being a man of principle. The Cold War taught me that the greatest weapon in the world isn't a nuclear bomb. It's a clear conscience and a steady hand. So, as you ride into your own battles today, remember the Duke. Remember that the silence isn't something to fear. It's a place where you find your strength. Keep your eyes on the trail, your hand on your heart, and your spirit unchained. The frontier is still waiting for men of honor. I'll see you at the sunset.